Hey Optimancers, Chris here. The online buzz I've seen around the fighter in Playtest 7 has been mostly positive. Why? Let's take a look. The class chart is mostly unchanged from Playtest 5, though you do get one more weapon mastery at level 16. 5 was probably more than I was going to use anyways, so one more doesn't really amount to much in my opinion. Then we move on to the class features. So at level 1, we're going to have a fighting style, which is the same as the player's handbook and Playtest 5, except that it allows you to change your fighting style when you gain a level. This is appreciated, as if you find a magic weapon or something, you can not only change your weapon mastery selections to select the weapon, now when you gain a level, you can also change your fighting style to match the weapon you're using. So I'm in favor of this amendment. Speaking of style, if you are subscribed to this channel, then you've got style. And if you aren't subscribed to this channel, then you can correct that horrible mistake right now. Second wind. So they've buffed it again. In the player's handbook, it's usable once per short rest. In Playtest 5, it was usable between 2 and 4 times, depending on your level, per long rest. Now it has uses equal to Playtest 5, but you recover one more on a short rest, so you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. They really seem to want Second Wind to be a major feature, and I think they're succeeding. It's really interesting to watch how Second Wind is evolving in the playtest to a point where it's rivaling Action Surge. Let me explain. If you assume even one short rest, this is 3d10 plus 3 healing, or 19.5 average, at level 1, just using bonus actions. How much is that? Well, it's definitely more than a first level cleric can heal them, and we probably have about 13 hit points. So that's 150% of our hit point total. And the scaling brings it to 5d10 plus 100 healing, or 127.5 average at level 20, and you probably have about 184 hit points. So even at level 20, this first level feature is still healing about 69% of your total. That is not bad scaling, and as we're going to see, healing won't be our only option for Second Wind. It's going to be a class resource that we can spend in multiple ways. And then we get Weapon Mastery, which is the same as Playtest 5, except at level 16 and higher you get one more weapon. Which again, I don't think is a significant change. My experience so far, a character with Weapon Mastery is probably using 2 to 3 of them fairly regularly, and that's it. Level 2, Action Surge. So this saw a nerf in Playtest 5, limiting the fighter to the attack, dash, disengage, or dodge action with the extra action provided. The player's handbook version has no limitation for what you use the extra action for. Now, Playtest 7 seems to have compromised, allowing any action other than the magic action. Previously, Action Surge was the only way in the game for a player character to cast 2 1-action leveled spells on their turn. You can still do that with Action Surge, but only with the Eldritch Knight, which we'll get to. And frankly, that's how it should be. I'm pretty happy with where this has landed. Tactical Mind. So this is a brand new feature that allows a fighter to expend one use of their Second Wind feature to add a d10 to a failed ability check, potentially changing the result. Now what I really like here is that if the result isn't changed by adding the d10, you get to keep your use of Second Wind. Now like I said, I like this, but this does, along with other features for other classes, represent an overall identity change for classes. Barbarians and fighters have gotten significant bonuses available for improving skill checks. Barbarians primarily through primal knowledge, and fighters with this. Which classes count as the quote-unquote skill experts has definitely had their lines blurred. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's worth noting. So I think levels 1 and 2 are coming in very strong for the fighter. Level 3, they get a subclass feature, which is the same as the player's handbook and Playtest 5. Level 4, an ability score improvement, same as the player's handbook and Playtest 5. Level 5 gets us extra attack, which is the same as the player's handbook and Playtest 5, and of course, very important. And then we also get Tactical Shift, which is a brand new feature. When you use Second Wind with your bonus action, you can move up to half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. In the playtest, there's a number of additional ways for all kinds of characters to enhance their movement, and I am glad to see that fighters aren't being left behind. Notice it says when you use your Second Wind with a bonus action. Can you spend your Second Wind without using a bonus action? Yes, you can, through Tactical Mind. So I guess the idea is to make sure you aren't combining these features. Not sure the point of that restriction, but that's definitely why they've worded it this way. At level 6, you get an ability score increase. This is one of the bonus ability score increases that fighters get, and it's the same as the Player's Handbook and Playtest 5. This was also a level where the Playtest 5 fighter got a subclass feature. Now with the reversion to the Player's Handbook progression, the fighter waits one more level. So at level 7, they get a subclass feature, which is the same as the Player's Handbook. The Playtest 5 fighter also got Weapon Expert at this level, which allowed them to change the mastery property of one weapon. This has been pushed to level 9 with an added enhancement. At level 8, they get ability score increase, same as Player's Handbook and Playtest 5. And then at level 9, we're going to get Indomitable. The Player's Handbook fighter may reroll one saving throw per long rest, with a second one at level 13 and a third one at level 17. The Playtest 5 fighter added the character's fighter level as a bonus to the reroll, which is huge, but the feature use no longer scaled, though they could use it in conjunction with Second Wind at level 17, which was immensely good. Now it's usable the same number of times as the Player's Handbook, but it does include the fighter's level as a bonus to the reroll. I'm extremely relieved to see that survived. This honestly is a huge improvement to the fighter. Kind of makes them the saving throw kings at higher levels, something they absolutely weren't in the 2014 Player's Handbook. I also appreciate the more linear progression in uses. The once per long rest until level 17 wasn't ideal. Then they get Master of Armaments. So this is the replacement for the Playtest 5's Weapon Expert at level 7. This allows the fighter to change the mastery property of all their weapons that they have mastery of. But honestly, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. Level 10, they're going to get a subclass feature, same as the Player's Handbook and Playtest 5. Level 11, they get their 2 extra attacks. Other than the slight name change from the Player's Handbook, it's the same, and it's the same as Playtest 5. Level 12, ability score increase, same as the Player's Handbook and Playtest 5. And then at level 13, we're going to get another brand new feature, Studied Attacks. If you make an attack roll and miss, you have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature before the end of your next turn. And I like it. Jeremy Crawford explained the thematics behind it in the video, and I can get behind the idea of the fighter, the master of combat, studying the defenses of a creature and exploiting their weaknesses. It's also a fairly good feature. The Playtest 5 fighter got Weapon Adept at this level, which allowed them to give one weapon 2 weapon mastery properties, and they could decide which one they used when they made an attack. Now that feature needed some clarification, whether the decision was made before or after the attack roll, because it had some conflicting wording, but I assumed when Jeremy Crawford talked about juicing that feature up, I figured you just get the 2 mastery properties all the time. But instead, they just dropped that feature entirely. And I suppose Studied Attacks is the juiced up replacement. I guess. I mean, Studied Attacks is probably better than Weapon Adept. I can get behind this. At level 14, ability score improvement, same as the Player's Handbook. Playtest 5, this got pushed to level 15 to make way for a subclass feature, which created the odd situation where he had ability score increase 2 levels in a row. But one way or the other, this is one of the fighter's bonus ability score improvements. At level 15, you get a subclass feature, same as the Player's Handbook. Playtest 5 fighter got a second action surge at this level, which is a pretty big deal, so that is a bit of a step backwards. At level 16, an ability score increase, same as both. Level 17, we're going to get another action surge use and another indomitable use, same as the Player's Handbook. The Playtest 5 fighter got that really stonks unconquerable feature at this level that let them use indomitable a lot while healing at the same time. But we're just going to get more linear progressions now. Level 18, we're going to get a subclass feature, same as the Player's Handbook. The Playtest 5 fighter got their 4 attacks per round at level 18. And then at level 19, we're going to get ability score increase, which is the same as both. And at level 20, we're going to get 3 extra attacks, which is the same as the Player's Handbook. Playtest 5 got an epic boon at this level. So my overall impressions of the fighter. I liked the Playtest 5 fighter quite a bit. And I think I like this one even more. In fact, as I'm making a list of the changes here, and I'm looking for the ones I don't like so I can make a pros and cons list, I'm pretty short on cons. Like, the improvements to Second Wind, I am totally on board. Fighting style flexibility, again, I think it's great. Action Surge for everything but the magic action, I think they've landed in a good place there. Tactical Mind, I'm for it. Tactical Shift, good change. Indomitable scaling uses with a big bonus, this sounds great. Master of Armaments looks like a small improvement, but it's an improvement. Studied Attacks looks good. it's a fair replacement for Weapon Adept, and it is more clear in how it works. That's a whole lot of good. Not massive improvements, but improvements. Now let's look at the few steps backwards. Unconquerable, which was a really nice feature. It is hard to see it go. 3 extra attacks at level 18 being moved to level 20. I mean, I realize capstones are going back to 20, but this one seems to hurt more than most. But overall, this is a good job. I think the fighter is looking really good. So let's move on to the subclasses. Battlemaster. I mean, this has been a top level fighter subclass from day one. I personally consider the Echo Knight and Rune Knight to be more powerful yet, though when I did my subclass tier ranks, I had a lot of disagreement on that in the comments, so my opinion may not be the popular opinion. Either way, players love this subclass. It's not something you want to mess with too much. So at level 3, we're going to have combat superiority, and I mean the subclass is all down to this. And good news, there is not one change here. I'll go over the maneuvers after covering the rest of the subclass features. Did you know that Battlemasters had additional subclass features beyond the scaling of combat superiority? Well, they do. Let's take a look. So, there's Student of War. This is a ribbon. Used to give proficiency in Artisan's Tools, whoop-de-doo. Now it's Artisan's Tools plus 1 skill proficiency from the list available to fighters. So, it's still a ribbon feature, but it's no longer an insignificant ribbon. At level 7, we're going to get Know Your Enemy. In the Player's Handbook, this lets you study another creature for 1 minute, and then you can learn its physical ability scores, armor class, hit points, class levels, though most times NPCs and monsters don't have class levels. And how many of those levels are fighter levels, once again, usually wasn't going to come up. And in the past 10 years, I have seen this feature used exactly 2 times by the same player with the same character in a campaign several years ago. In other words, haven't seen it used very much. Now this feature lets you know the creature's damage, immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities. It's limited to once per long rest, unless you want to use a superiority die to use it again. No, seriously though. It is a bonus action. This is going to get used now. Level 10. So there's no subclass feature at level 10. The scaling of your combat superiority die is the feature, which is the same as the Player's Handbook. And then at level 15, Relentless. So, the Player's Handbook has the kind of feature that is a pet peeve for me. Like if you roll initiative with no uses of combat superiority, you get 1 die back. So if you have that 1 die left when you roll initiative, screw you. I hate that. Now, once per turn, you can use a maneuver for free using a D8. That is amazing. Fantastic. And since it's once per turn, this means that if you use a reaction maneuver like riposte or parry, you can use this as well as using it on your turn, which is great. Now, here's where we get into what I consider a gray area. Though I'm sure I'll get comments from viewers that are 100% on this in both directions. You know what? As we go through the maneuvers, I'll bring up Relentless again, because I do think it's a bit of a gray area how it interacts with some of them. But let's move on to level 18. We're going to get Ultimate Combat Superiority and your die scales. This used to be called Improved Combat Superiority, but otherwise it's the same. Okay, but to really assess the Battlemaster, we all know it's all about the maneuvers. So let's see what's changed. So Ambush, this one's from Tasha's. Nice little option to improve your initiative or stealth check, and it's unchanged. So when you roll initiative, is that a turn? Because if it is, you can use Relentless for a free D8. What about if you're scouting and you roll stealth? Is that a turn? If so, you can add a free D8 with Relentless. I mean, there's one argument that the rules only deal with turns in combat, as in after initiative is rolled. The opposing argument is that turns are happening all the time, and initiative is really only determining their order when it matters. And I am not telling you which interpretation is right. What I am telling you is you will need to have a shared understanding with your table on how Relentless interacts with Ambush when it comes up. Bait and Switch. This is a personal favorite of mine from Tasha's. You switch places with a willing creature within 5 feet by spending at least 5 feet of movement. Presumably, the at least part is addressing difficult terrain or similar movement modifiers. The movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks, and you choose the creature you switched with or yourself to have an armor class boosted by the superiority die roll until the start of your next turn. And it is unchanged. Like I said, This is a favorite of mine. That armor class boost with duration is pretty impactful. I'm not saying this is the most powerful maneuver, but it's pretty powerful, and it is my favorite. Commander Strike. In the player's handbook, this allowed you to forego one of your attacks from your attack action and use a bonus action, and you could give a reaction attack to an ally who could see or hear you, adding the die to their damage. Nobody took this one because it was awful. You're essentially giving up three kind of actions, right? You're giving up an attack, you're giving up a bonus action, and the ally is giving up a reaction for one attack. So they've removed the bonus action requirement and added that it works with an unarmed strike as well. So this is an objective buff. Is it enough of a buff for a Battlemaster player to actually choose this maneuver? Well, I've already seen it used in a playtest, so I guess so. Commanding Presence, another one from Tasha's. You add your superiority die to an intimidation, performance, or persuasion check, and there's no change. I've never seen this one selected, so it probably could have stood a buff, but it's not worse anyways. And once again, maybe Relentless works for this. Disarming Attack. So the player's handbook version says that after you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you add the superiority die to the damage. And if the target fails a strength saving throw, they drop an object of your choice that they're holding, landing at its feet. And there's one change here. Instead of weapon attack, it's just when you hit a creature with an attack. So obviously unarmed strikes now qualify, but also spell attacks would qualify. So you could disarm an opponent with an Eldritch Blast, for example. Anyways, potential buff, but mostly the same. Also, this is a change we see on several maneuvers, and I'm assuming it's intentional. Distracting Strike. So the player's handbook version. You hit a creature with a weapon attack, you add the superiority die to the damage roll, and the next attack against that target by someone other than you has advantage as long as it's before your next turn. And it's the same, with the exception of the same change of disarming attack. It can be added with any attack, not just a weapon. So again, for the average Battlemaster, this is no change. Evasive Footwork. So you spend a superiority die and add it to your armor class until you stop moving, presumably after your movement is used up on your turn. And it is terrible. Bait and switch was kind of the fix for this one. So they've changed it, they buffed it. Now you add your armor class until the end of the turn. The wording is clearer, but it still sucks. Take bait and switch instead if you want to boost your armor class. Just switch spots with someone, whether you need to or not, and get the armor class boost for a round. This is poor balance, always has been. Feinting Attack. So the player's handbook version. You use a bonus action and you pick a creature within 5 feet and you have advantage on your next attack against them, and you add the superiority die to the damage if you hit. And it's not so good. The bonus action cost is the problem. Honestly, just removing the bonus action would have been fine. Spend the die, get advantage on an attack with the die as a bonus damage, but they kept it as it is here. Then we have Goading Attack. So the old version is when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you add a superiority die to the damage, and they make a wisdom saving throw or have disadvantage to attack anyone but you until the end of your next turn. This is one of the better maneuvers, though Menacing is just better against a creature not immune to the frightened condition. New version is exactly the same except for not needing a weapon attack to set it up. Then we have Lunging Attack. So the old version, you would spend a superiority die and increase the reach of that attack by 5 feet, and then you add the die to the damage roll, and it was lousy. The new version has a total redesign and it's better. As a bonus action, you can expend the die and you can take the dash action. If you move at least 10 feet in straight line before hitting with a melee attack as part of the attack action on this turn, add the superiority die to the damage. Much better. Menacing Attack, old version. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you spend a superiority die and you add it to the damage, and they make a wisdom saving throw or they're frightened of you until the end of your next turn. This is one of the best maneuvers. I see it taken and used all the time, and there's no change other than not needing the attack to be with a weapon. Parry. So the old version, when you take damage from a melee attack, you can use your reaction and a die and reduce the damage by the number rolled plus your dexterity modifier. And it was not bad at lower levels, but pretty bad at higher levels because the damage you take goes up a lot faster than your ability score modifier. The new version is the same, except now you can choose either your strength or dexterity modifier. So that is going to be a buff for maybe half of Battlemasters, and the same for the rest. Precision Attack, old version. Do I need to say, if you play a Battlemaster, this is usually your first choice, so you probably know what it does. The new version, other than not requiring a weapon attack, is the same. Pushing attack, so the old version. You hit with a weapon, you add the die to the damage, and then they make a strength saving throw if their large size are smaller or they're pushed up to 15 feet away from you. New version, so this one is one where not any attack will do. It has to be a weapon or an unarmed strike, otherwise it's the same. Rally, old version. You use a bonus action and an ally who can see you or hear you gains temporary hit points equal to the die roll plus your charisma modifier. It's terrible, just terrible. The new version, you can choose which modifier to use between intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. I mean, technically that's a buff, I suppose. I mean, your wisdom modifier might not even be a -1. Still, it looks pretty bad to me. Riposte, old version. When a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against a creature, adding the die to the damage on a hit. And the new version, it works with unarmed strikes. Sweeping attack, old version. When you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can spend a die to attempt to damage another creature within 5 feet of the original. If the attack roll would hit a second creature, they take damage equal to the roll of your superiority die. Awful. New version, you can use unarmed strikes. Otherwise it's the same, including still being awful. And tactical assessment. This one is from Tasha's old version. Spend the die, add it to an investigation, history, or insight check. Obviously, this one doesn't get taken very often, and the new version has no change. Once again, Relentless may just give you a free D8 on any of these checks. We're almost done. Trip attack, old version. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you spend the die, you add it to the damage roll, they make a strength saving throw if their large size or smaller, or they fall prone. I see this taken once in a while, but rarely. New version, it works with unarmed strikes as well. With the existence of the topple weapon mastery, this one is probably obsolete. Like, I'm not even sure why they're publishing it. I mean, I guess you could make a creature save twice or fall prone. But anyway, that's it. So basically, top to bottom, they're mostly the same. There's a few buffs here and there. My main issue with the Battlemaster is I've always figured that the maneuvers aren't well balanced. I mean, if they were, I'd see Commander Strike, Commanding Presence, Evasive Footwork, Feinting Attack, Lunging Attack, Maneuvering Attack, Rally, Sweeping Attack, and Tactical Assessment actually being taken. Like at least one of them in the past 50 Battlemaster builds I've seen. I don't see that really changing. I mean, maybe someone takes Lunging Attack now. On the other hand, players love this subclass as it is, despite the obvious maneuver picks. So maybe keeping well enough alone is the right move. And if you love the Battlemaster, you are still going to love the Battlemaster. If you don't, well, there are some buffs, and not just Relentless. So maybe your opinion changes for the better, but for the most part, it is basically the same subclass. Moving on to the Brawler. This is a brand new subclass. This subclass is designed to make the most of unarmed strikes and improvised weapon attacks. And there's an important design note here. The 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide will include magic items that enhance unarmed strikes and improvised weapons. So thank you. But honestly, I mean, come on. They're going to be worse than magic weapons, right? Like, it'll be a +1 to hit and damage, but it's rare and you need attunement or something like that. Maybe I'm being a pessimist. I hope I'm being a pessimist. Anyways, let's move on to the features. Level 3. So you're going to get 2 features at level 3. The first is Unarmed Expert. You can roll a d6 plus strength for unarmed strikes, and if you aren't holding any weapons or a shield, it's a d8. So this is the same as the unarmed combat fighting style from Tasha's. I guess I understand why they're starting with this, but ultimately it needs to be made better. The idea is that you're using your unarmed strikes instead of a weapon because you chose the Brawler subclass, but you're doing less damage and not accessing your weapon masteries. A subclass with this theme needs to be better, or at least minimum as good, at using unarmed strikes as weapons. This does not achieve that. Right away, I think a d8 or d10 with 2 free hands is the absolute minimum damage this should offer, and it should either get a weapon mastery or some similar effect. As it is, this feature just penalizes my fighter for putting away their weapon, and that's not why I choose the Brawler subclass. Improvised Expert. You're proficient with improvised weapons. Should note right now that at least the current playtest version of Tavern Brawler does not provide this proficiency anymore. So, at least in the playtest, This is the only way to get improvised weapon proficiencies. Here's how it works. When you finish a long rest, you pick whether your one-handed improvised weapons will have the light or thrown property with a range of 20/60, and then you'll pick whether your two-handed improvised weapons will have the reach or thrown property with a range of 10/30. Also, whenever you attack with a one-handed improvised weapon, you can choose to apply the Sap, Slow, or Vex mastery, and whenever you attack with a two-handed improvised weapon, you can choose to apply the Cleave, Push, or Topple mastery. So they haven't revised the rules for improvised weapons, at least yet, so here's a reminder of how they work. An improvised weapon is any object you can wield in one or two hands. This part is really important. If the improvised weapon is similar to an actual weapon, the DM may choose to have you use it as if it were that weapon. So maybe a table leg is treated as a club mechanically. Otherwise, the improvised weapon deals a d4 damage of a type appropriate to the object. So my question would be, if my brawler picks up an improvised weapon that is similar to, say, a great club, do I get the great club damage and still benefit from this feature? Because if so, this is really, really strong. With the D4, it's still not bad. First, I figured it was just worse than using a regular weapon, but reading this more carefully, I noticed you can switch out the mastery whenever you attack. So that's a bit like the old 13th level fighter, Playtest 5, Weapon Adept feature, except you get to pick from 3 masteries instead of 2. I'm not saying that's better than just using a weapon, but it does present at least some advantage. If I can pick up a Maul-like improvised weapon, and it's a Maul plus this, then this is a top tier 3rd level fighter feature. Whether this works with weapon-like improvised weapons absolutely needs to be answered. You can't leave something so important with everyone guessing. I mean, maybe they're planning a change to the improvised weapon rules that is going to address this, but then those rules should have been included in this playtest. There are a couple head scratchers like this. Like, you revert spell lists back to their old versions, fine, but how are we supposed to use the Bard in playtest games? Each playtest document should be presenting a set of revised rules that we can playtest to see how they work out. The only feedback I'm going to be able to provide for Improvised Expert is we need to know whether this applies to weapon-like improvised weapons to test this out. Then level 7, Grappling Expert. So you can make an unarmed strike as a bonus action to initiate a shove or grapple, and if you start your turn grappling a creature, you can deal a d6 damage to it. So I love this feature in combination with the playtest Grappler feat. Let's bring that up. So you increase your strength or dexterity, then you have advantage on attack rolls against creatures grappled by you, great. Initiating that grapple with my bonus action could set up advantage for the rest of my turn. Then, I'm not slowed when I move a creature I've grappled. This one is really good, I've used it before. And finally, when I hit a creature with an unarmed strike as part of my action, I can deal both damage and grapple with the same attack. This is cool too because it doesn't conflict with Grappling Expert. That one is my bonus action. This one is in combination with an attack. So I can grapple a creature with one hand as a bonus action, move easily to another target, I'm not even slowed, and then hit and grapple that creature with my other hand. And then have advantage on my extra attacks with, probably unarmed strikes like headbutts or knees or something afterwards. This is super cool. But the problem occurs at level 10. Dirty Fighting. You have advantage on attack rolls with improvised weapons and unarmed strikes against a creature you are grappling. See the problem? That's one of my Grappler feat features. So I either take the feat that is just super obvious for this subclass and works so well with the other features and then get no 10th level feature with my subclass, or I skip the super thematic feat to get half of it at 10th level. And the thing is this is super easy to fix, or it should be super easy to fix, because what you could say here is you get the Grappler feat, and if you already have it, you can pick a different feat, and that would fix the problem. However, they're not going to do that, and the reason they're not going to do that is because then you have a feature that references a feat, and feats are supposed to be optional, which means they can't have features that reference feats, so that fix isn't going to happen. So I'm not sure what they need to do here, but they need to do something, because this, as it is going to end up being a dead level for the Brawler. At level 15, we're going to get the best feature of this subclass, so check this out. When you hit a creature with an improvised weapon, add your proficiency bonus to the damage roll. Not once, not twice, with every hit. The damage die of your two-handed improvised weapons becomes a d12, so if you aren't grappling, nice. In addition, whenever you attack with an improvised weapon, whether one or two-handed, you can use 2 mastery properties from Improvise Expert instead of 1. Now, this isn't something that combines all that great with grappling. I mean, sapping an enemy I have grappled is fine, but slowing them is kind of pointless because they have a speed of 0. And I already have advantage, so Vex is pointless too, unless I'm letting go, I suppose. But you won't be grappling all the time. Some creatures can't be grappled, others are too big for you to grapple, and in those cases, two-handed improvised weapons are made really good here. Push an enemy beside one of their allies and then cleave with the same attack. Then add my proficiency bonus to both damages. Yes, please. This is a strong, strong feature. Finally, our level 18 feature, unarmed strikes increase in damage by 1 die type.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Okay, so a lot comes down to how improvised weapons that resemble other weapons are handled, but potentially level 3 could be quite good for the Brawler, or very so-so, depending. Unarmed strikes, though, are not made good enough for sure. Level 7 is pretty good. Level 10 needs to be redesigned. It's redundant with a feat that we obviously want for this subclass. Level 15 is great, and level 18, we don't talk about level 18. Overall, for a first draft, it's okay, but it needs work, and it needs some cleanup. Champion. So this is definitely the worst fighter subclass in the Player's Handbook, and arguably the worst period. I mean, it competes with the Purple Dragon Knight from the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. Then, in Playtest 5, the champion was revised, and it was, well, better. Not amazing, but definitely improved. Well, now we have Draft 2. Level 3, we're going to get Improved Critical, the iconic feature of the subclass, other than applying to unarmed strikes, which, unless you have some method to improve their damage, don't do any additional damage on a critical. So let's just say it's the same as the Player's Handbook in Playtest 5. Then we have Remarkable Athlete. So in Playtest 5, the champion had Adaptable Victor, which gave them a skill proficiency that they could switch out after a long rest. Well, that is gone, and now we have Remarkable Athlete, which existed in name anyways in the Player's Handbook at level 7, but it is totally redesigned. It provides advantage on initiative rolls and strength athletics checks, and improves the jump distance on a running long jump by a number of feet equal to your strength modifier. In other words, you can running long jump 150% of the distance of another character with the same strength score. I'm not sure why they're limiting that to only running long jumps, but this is a solid feature. Advantage on initiative is good. At level 3, it's really good. And then there's the other stuff. Plus the critical range improvement. And overall, it's a solid level 3. Now we go to level 7 with additional fighting style. So this is the same as the Player's Handbook. This is a step back from Playtest 5, where the champion got this at level 6, as well as heroic advantage once per combat. So you took the fighting style you wanted most at level 1. So let's be honest, at best, this is worse than that. I think we'll see a lot of defensive combat style taken here, and that's going to be +1 armor class. And that's, I think, pretty so-so for 7th level. Level 10, though, we get Heroic Warrior. So the Playtest 5 champion got this at level 6, but it was once per combat. Now you get Heroic Advantage at the start of each of your turns. So that is advantage once every round. That's great. Here's the one thing I don't love about this, and this is going to be a weird complaint, but the old version was an insurance policy. I'm hit with an important saving throw. Okay, I'll use my once per combat heroic advantage. Now, I pretty much want to spend this on my turn, so I can get it back my next turn. So it's probably advantage on an attack roll every turn. So when I do need to make a saving throw, I probably won't have it. That's, like I said, a weird complaint. It's advantage on an attack roll every turn, so I mean, it is good, and it is objectively better than the old version. And if I wasn't one of these people that is just determined to spend a resource that I know I'm going to get back, I could just save it and use it for the saving throw anyways. Level 15, Superior Critical. So it's the same as the Player's Handbook version, except again with the unarmed strikes. This was all the way back to level 10 with the Playtest 5 champion, and honestly, it's not great. I just wouldn't expect any more than 2d6 at the absolute most with my 15th level fighter champion on a critical hit. Doing that 2d6 an additional 5%, even 10% of the time, just doesn't add up to much at all. Improved critical at 3 is not great for the same reason, but at least if you want to multi-class into something that does more on a critical hit, you might get more out of it. Not that crit fishing builds are great or that I'm recommending them, but once in a while, they're okay. Here, we're not crit fishing, we're just doing unimpressive critical hits more often. And at level 18, Survivor. So this was level 14 in Playtest 5, and it's a pretty cool feature. I mean, it doesn't do anything unless you're really wounded, and it performs best when you're unconscious or at 0 hit points and dying, which hopefully at level 18 isn't a regular occurrence. The interaction is cool anyways. So when you drop to 0 hit points, you make your death saves with advantage, and if you roll an 18 to 20 on either die, you pop up with 1 hit point. That means you're really never going to die from failed death saving throws anymore. And at the start of your turn, if you have less than half your total hit points, you gain 5 plus your constitution modifier. So this feature is well named. To kill your character, basically, they're going to have to use extra attacks to finish you off once you go down. Again, I don't know how often it comes up because, I mean, Healing Word gets you up, and we're talking about level 18. Surely we have some healing options. So overall, I mean, the champion actually took some subtle hits here, just because features got moved to higher levels. Additional Fighting Style is a higher level, Heroic Warrior is 4 levels higher, Superior Critical is 5 levels higher, and Survivor is 4 levels higher. So does Remarkable Athlete and the improvement to Heroic Warrior make up for that? Yeah, maybe. Remarkable Athlete is a huge boost at level 3, and a lot of those features being pushed back are okay at best. So overall, I think this subclass probably looks better at level 3 and okay through the rest of its progression. Now let's move on to the Eldritch Knight, which is pretty exciting. In my opinion, we are saving the best for last. The Eldritch Knight made out very well. So at level 3, we're going to get 2 features. The first is spellcasting, and this is the premier feature of the Eldritch Knight, obviously. It's not a lot of spells, but spells are good, and throwing the shield spell on your fighter alone makes a big difference. And the spell chart looks the same as it always has. Cantrips are the same, but the difference is in how we prepare spells. Previously, the Eldritch Knight could choose 1 spell of their choice from the wizard list at level 3, another at level 8, another at 14, another at 20. But all the rest needed to be abjuration or evocation spells from the wizard list. This was a big limitation, and it has been mostly removed. Level 3, you still have to select 2 out of your 3 spells from abjuration or evocation, but when you gain levels, you can just switch them out, and any new spells you pick aren't restricted at all. So that is a really nice buff for Eldritch Knights. And spellcasting has obviously always been the iconic primary feature of this subclass, kind of like the Battlemaster and combat superiority. And like with the Battlemaster, you would be forgiven for not remembering the Eldritch Knight gets additional features. But unlike the Battlemaster, none of the features here are just reminding you that your spellcasting is scaled. So we're going to get War Bond. This was previously called Weapon Bond, and it allowed you to bond 2 weapons, and you couldn't be disarmed with those weapons, and you could summon one of them to your hand as a bonus action. You could switch out your bonded weapon with a 1-hour ritual that you completed as part of a short rest. And basically it's the same, there's a bit of altered wording, but mechanically it's going to work out the same. And this is obviously the ribbon feature at level 3. Spellcasting is the big one. Level 7, War Magic. So this is huge. The old War Magic allowed, when you use your action to cast a cantrip, to use your bonus action to make a weapon attack. This was okay if you combine it with something like Eldritch Blast or something. Otherwise, it was questionable if it was any better than just using the attack action, especially if you had a decent bonus action option. Now War Magic basically upgrades your extra attack to match the Blade Singer's extra attack. So you take the attack action and can replace an attack with a cantrip, and that's great. It also doesn't conflict with the new action surge, since that prevents using the magic action, not the attack action including a cantrip. So you can weapon attack, cantrip attack, action surge, weapon attack, cantrip attack, and your bonus action is still ready to go. Awesome. It's as good as the Blade Singer. But here's where it's better. When you get to level 11, you can combine this with the 3 attacks. So 2 weapon attacks and a cantrip. And a Blade Singer cannot do that. And then at level 20, it'll combine with your 3 extra attacks. So then we move on to our level 10 and 15 features, which are the same as the Player's Handbook versions. Eldritch Strike. So this allowed the Eldritch Knight to impose disadvantage on the next saving throw that a creature you just hit with a weapon attack makes against a spell that you cast before the end of your next turn. And Arcane Charge. When you use an action surge, you can teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see either before or after the additional action. And finally, level 18, Improved War Magic. This used to allow the Eldritch Knight to make a weapon attack as a bonus action, after casting a leveled spell with their action. Now it allows the Eldritch Knight to exchange 2 weapon attacks from the attack action to cast a leveled spell that normally uses an action. This also bypasses the restriction on action surge, since again, it's the attack action, not the magic action. You're allowed to take attack actions. So basically, this saves you a bonus action, and at level 20, it will also be 1 more weapon attack. So this is okay, but it's a clear objective buff over the old version. And yeah, the Eldritch Knight did pretty awesome. And the fighter overall, I think, did very well. I mean, I think I had higher hopes for what they were going to do with Weapon Adept and Expert than we got, but ultimately we got an upgrade with other things. The subclasses did okay too. The Battle Master is definitely boosted. Champion is potentially boosted. Maybe it's close to the same. And honestly, I do think it could use a little more. Brawler, I think, is a pretty good draft, in my opinion, but it does need to be changed. And the big winner here is the Eldritch Knight. But this is the fighter, so we have to look at damage. Especially want to see how the Eldritch Knight measures up. But first, I actually need to amend my Playtest 5 fighter damage. So here's where the champion fighter landed in my calculations, at 50.44. And here's the build. Ancestry Human, Starting Strength 16, Fighting Style Defense, Polearm Master at 4, Great Weapon Master at 6, Sentinel at 8, Charger at 12, all increasing strength up to 20. The second fighting style was Great Weapon Fighter, and then Halberd Mastery with Cleave and Graze. So I need to lose one of those masteries since Weapon Adept is gone, so I'll keep the higher performer, which was Graze. We also have some notable buffs here though. Heroic Warrior will give us advantage on an attack every round, which we'll use on our first attack, and then Studied Attacks gives us advantage on any additional attacks if we miss with an attack. Damn! That's going to be a lot of extra math. Okay, let's do it. So I assume a 60% chance to hit. That's going to be 84% when we apply Heroic Advantage. The Great Weapon Fighting Style gives us an average result on a d10 of 6.3, and we add 5 for Strength for 11.3 average damage. Start with attacks that have advantage. This will include the first attack for sure because of Heroic Advantage, and one of the other 3 attacks might have advantage, in which case this would apply to that attack as well. The crit range is 15% normally with an 18 to 20 range, so that's 28% with advantage. So we have 84% chance to hit times 11.3 for 9.49, 28% chance to crit times 6.3 for 1.76, and we have a 16% chance of missing, in which case we get Graze for 5 additional damage, so that works out to 0.8. So our first attack averages 12.05 damage. I'll just make a note here that the difference in expected damage between an attack with advantage and no advantage is only 2.08. Not going to bother going through the math there, but not as much as you might expect because Graze is actually delivering more if our chance to miss is higher, and so we've lowered our chance to miss, and so Graze is doing less damage. So how much extra damage are we getting from Studied Attacks? Well, this one is not limited in use, could even come up multiple times in one turn. Also, if you miss with your last attack, you would get advantage on your first attack on the following round. On the other hand, if you switch targets, you don't get it, and that will come up. Like, you miss with your last attack on your turn, and that opponent goes down. Maybe somebody else drops them before your next turn, and now you need to switch targets. And of course, if this does give you advantage on your first attack on a turn, then you aren't using Heroic Advantage until your second attack. So things get complicated, but let's start with the assumption that we use Heroic Advantage on attack 1. So we have a 16% chance of advantage on attack 2. 84% times 16% plus 60% times 84%. We have a 64% chance to hit on the second attack. Then we have 84% times 36% and 60% times 64%. 69% chance to hit on the third attack. Then we have 84% times 31% and 60% times 69%, 67% chance to hit on the fourth attack. So those are our chances to hit, including our chances of having advantage on those attacks. That's more complicated than I normally do, but those are your chances. Just take my word for it. Okay, chance to crit. Yikes. Okay, so 15% base, 28% with advantage. We have 28% chance to crit times 16% plus 15% times 84%, 17%. and then 28 times 36. The math's up there. On your first attack, it's 28%. On your second attack, it's 17%. On your third attack, it's 20%. And on your fourth attack, it's 19% chance to crit with our increased crit range. And you know what? I was just going to say let's use 19%, and that's probably close enough. And I should have done that and saved myself the time. It would have been close enough. But anyway, this math is just a little out of my comfort zone. It's like calculating vex damage. But let's pretend we're switching targets if we miss on attack 4. First attack was 12.05 damage. Second attack, there's the math, 10.1 damage. Third attack, there's the math, 10.61 damage. Fourth attack, I'm assuming a fourth D10 attack, by the way. If you're wondering why, go back and watch my Playtest 5 fighter video, but the quick version is because of reasons. Anyways, fourth attack, 10.43 on average. And so much math, we do 12.05 plus 10.1 plus 10.61, 10.43, and we are doing 43.19 damage per round. But we're going to add some more stuff. So the Charger feat, a D8 damage, probably can get charge damage pretty much every turn. That was another thing I needed to update. I was using 50%, and it was pointed out to me in the comments, there's no way it's only going to be 50%. It's probably not 100% either, but it's going to be close to 100%. And if you don't mind eating the occasional opportunity attack, you probably can get it really close to 100%. I'm assuming we're applying it to our first attack. That makes the most sense. So 84% chance to hit times 4.5 average charge damage, and then 28% chance to crit times 4.5 additional damage. And now our total damage per round is up to 48.23. Now we're going to add Great Weapon Master. That adds 5 damage once per turn if we hit at least once. And our chance to hit at least once is exceedingly high. We take the 100% minus all our chances to miss multiplied. There it is up on your screen. 99.4% chance of hitting at least once. So times 5, that's 4.97. And we're going to add that to our damage per round, and we're up to 53.2. So that's it. 53.2 damage per round with the champion with Playtest 7. And we go from 50.44 to 53.2. It's not a huge increase, but it's almost 3 points, and we're getting advantage to initiative, so not too bad. Someone asked me the other day what I did for a living, and I told them I make YouTube videos. They asked, what about? And I said, I make Dungeons & Dragons videos. And they said, oh, I play D&D. What kind of D&D videos do you make? And I said, math mostly. And they said, oh, really? And did you do extra education for math? And I said, some accounting courses. Funny how things work out. Anyway, speaking of math, Eldritch Knight. I'm basically using the same build except Eldritch Knight with Booming Blade. Now, Booming Blade is probably not going to be in the 2024 Player's Handbook, so maybe I should be using Shocking Grasp or something, but if you aren't going to be using Booming Blade anymore after the new Player's Handbook comes out, then ignore this part. So we'll have up to 3rd level spells at level 13, so we should cast Spirit Shroud. I just don't see how with 2 spells that come back after a long rest, how we'll have it up most of the time. But some of the time we might, though it would use our bonus action on round 1, so we would lose that attack. And we have Find Familiar, which might give us advantage on some of our attacks with help, but it could also get bonked mid-combat, and we wouldn't have it again until the next combat. There's Shadow Blade, though I don't think it's a good cast with this build. There's Haste, though again, only 2 slots, and we only get 1 attack on round 1. And there's that thing about losing concentration and losing a turn. So here's what it comes down to. Spellcasting will be some advantage in combat, usually defensively with a shield spell, but there will be some offensive boosts as well. And here's what I'm going to do to make my life easier, and I just want to be upfront about it before I present any calculations. I have decided to calculate as if the Familiar's Help action gives our fighter advantage on their first attack. With the playtest version of Find Familiar, that would exclude round 1, but I'm going to ignore that, and here's why. Spells like Spirit Shroud would increase our damage some of the time. It's hard to guess how much, but some of the time. We'll lose our Familiar some of the time. Hard to know how much, but some of the time. So I'm just going to say advantage on the first attack. It's probably close. And then I can just reuse the math I use for Champion. So that's my confession. It's over. Let's go. Our chance to hit with each attack, same as the Champion. There it is. chance to crit is different though because we have no increased crit range. So there's our crit chances, 10% on the first attack, 6% on the second, and 7% on the third and fourth. And we're going to Booming Blade on round 1 for 2d8 extra thunder damage. I've more recently been assuming secondary damage maybe 25% of the time if you hit, but it is 3d8 when it happens. So here's our first attack. It's 84% chance to hit times 11.3 for 9.49, 10% chance to crit for 6.3 additional weapon damage for 0.63, 16% chance to miss times 5 for graze is 0.8, 84% chance of delivering our Booming Blade damage of 9 for 7.56, and then 84% times 25% chance of delivering the secondary damage of 13.5 is 2.84. And then our initial damage is doubled on a crit, so 10% times 9 is 0.9. And our first attack delivers a very respectable 22.63 damage on average. And the rest is pretty easy. Our second attack has a 64% chance to hit, a 6% chance to crit, a 36% chance to miss for graze damage is 9.41. The third attack has a 69% chance to hit, a 7% chance to crit, 31% chance to miss, and that's 9.79 damage. And then the fourth attack is a 67% chance to hit, 7% chance to crit, 33% chance to miss, and that's 9.67. Then we have Charger, which has an 84% chance of being delivered, 10% chance it's a critical for 4.23, and then Great Weapon Master, which is the same as with the Champion at 4.97. So, to figure out our DPR, add them all together. 22.63 and 9.41 and 9.79 and 9.67 and 4.23 and 4.97, 60.7 average damage per round for the Eldritch Knight using Booming Blade. So 53.2 for the Champion, 60.7 for the Eldritch Knight. It being higher is no surprise, though it's not as much higher as I would have guessed. Booming Blade does get whittled away a little bit by the lower crit chance, I think. Still, looks like Eldritch Knight is doing similar damage to the Berserker, even a tiny bit higher. Oh, and in case you didn't watch the Playtest 5 video, both the Eldritch Knight and Champion way out-damaged their 2014 counterparts. It's not even close. So that is the Playtest 7 fighter. Let me know what you think about it below. Otherwise, until next time, I am going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, that's more complicated math today than I'm used to in these videos, but here is some easy math without the support of patrons. There is a 0% chance I could do this full time, and they have a 100% chance of my appreciation. And if you would be willing to support this channel, there is a link in the video description to my Patreon. They are absolute legends, and if you join at the major level or higher, I'm going to include you in video thank yous. And today I am thanking Airhead, Alex R, Vo, Bloody 9, Atherazone, CJ, Chris C, Clement Brunette, Coral, Dank Train, David Patton, Dewey Cheatham and Howe, Douglas Reynolds, Eden the DM, Eric Wasserman, Evan Getting, FBK05, Gishlife, Lightfoot, Heisenberger, Jay Gemmel, James Makla, James Sprague, Jean-Baptiste Blanchette, Jiriru, John Matera, Jonathan Zucker, Joseph Van Horn, Justin Times, Lars V, Mark D, Math Guy Dave, Mr. Brett, PCZ, Quicksilver HG80, Ramen Goblin, Scott Parsons, Sig, Speed Channel, Thunderlock, and William Whittles. Thank you all so much for your support, and an additional thank you to all the patrons of this channel.